Going to go ahead and get started here. It's kind of becoming a tradition, November-ish, end of the year. I'm sure January I'll approach Terry and give him some wacky topic for next year, but I usually ask Terry to kind of give us a presentation on a topic that's maybe not as common in these sorts of events, but really important things for us to be discussing, and oftentimes really important for us to be discussing with regards to the season that we're walking in. Relationships are always something we celebrate, but can also be strained during this time of the year. So that's the topic that I asked Terry to address for us this afternoon, this morning, depending on where you're at. And Terry, as always, we love having you on. We appreciate your time. We know you're very busy, and it's very meaningful to us that you would give of your time to prepare and to give this presentation. So with that, I am going to pass it off to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Adam. Hello, everybody. Great to be back and talking about a like Adam said, a random topic that I wasn't planning on speaking about at the beginning of the year. But I'm glad that I was asked to go into this. And last year, Adam asked me to speak about work-life balance, and it was a great experience. It was fun to dive into, and it was one of those things that I think a lot of times you're doing the act all the time, that you don't step back and think about it and think about the tools and the tricks and the tips that allow you to get better at something like a work-life balance. And so the same thing happened this time. Adam came to me and said, "Hey, listen, if November works, we want to talk about relationships." And I'm like, man, if you could get any more broad of a topic, I would love to see that. And yet I had the exact same experience. The one thing that I'll tell you throughout all this is take yourself outside of the normal presentation of your company, of the product, of the industry, whenever you can, and give yourself a chance to present or discuss something that maybe isn't something you talk about every day. You'll quickly realize how much you're doing things in that realm, and it's a lot of fun. So what I've prepared for today is a little conversation about what I've learned about how to grow relationships and how to really look at the assignments that you can work on to better your relationship skills. Like last year, I wanted to go ahead and start with a little video. So hopefully this will come through, and if not, we'll see. Oops. No, we're not going to do that. I don't want to do a whole ad on Viagra, so we'll just skip to it. I was trying to figure out a great way to get the Princess Bride into the relationship talk, where basically we know that we're here today to talk about marriage. Marriage is what we're here to talk about today, and it's really not. The relationship that we're going to talk about today is something completely different. So what I always do with these presentations is I get to a place where I start by defining it. And you just go right onto the internet, type it on in, use Google as your friend, and really get to a place where you can see what is it that we're going to talk about. And when I get to this, I always find a couple of things that really step out and identify themselves as the topics. And you can go ahead and read through these. I'm going to send this. Of course, this will be posted to the porthole, and you can have access to it. But when I really looked into the definition, it was the word of state of being connected. Connected meaning two-way street, meaning you and someone else bonded by something, and that's what we're going to go into. But the other one that I really enjoyed seeing was the word behave. And, we're going through a lot of changes on how we sell, on how we conduct ourselves as businessmen, when we're, changing our lifestyle habits or whatever it might be. And the one thing that I realize is you can't just go and decide tomorrow that you're going to be a good relationship person. It's not a switch. It's not an action. It's not a task. It's not a to-do. It's absolutely a behavior. And while you're interviewing individuals for your organization, or while you're employing people. You really have to understand if they have that ability to have that behavior to create relationships. And so, over the course of the next 45 minutes, what I really want to do is I want to take you through why relationships are important, give you some definitions as to what a relationship is, give you some tips and tricks on how to improve your ability to grow relationships, then share some stories with you along the way. I've got 4 mini assignments that are in here that I encourage you to take seriously and try them. And what you'll find is some of it will work and some of it won't. We're all a little different, but I encourage you to try those mini assignments, and then of course feedback what's working, what's not. So you get to relationships, and again, you can do a quick Google search. There's so many great quotes and so many great discussion points on relationships. And what people will tell you, and what any book you'll read, it's really the backbone to a strong business. Having the relationships will far outweigh a brand. It will far outweigh a product that you may have or a technology you may have. A relationship can stand the test of times, and I'm here, Adam's here, speaking from the past, that we understand the power of relationships, and quite frankly, many of you are here because of those relationships, because we've had some really good times and we've had some really poor times in our business relationships, and yet we're still here fighting the good fight. And so there's the inherently why a relationship is important, and then there's the detailed stats. And so I've posted an article to our intercompany chatter on Salesforce.com, and I've linked it into this presentation as well. And I was going through this, and just like anything, right? I'm presenting in about a month, and this article pops up, and I really started to dive into it. It was a LinkedIn article, and it was extremely telling that in this age and time, the number one thing that still drives a faster and a more efficient lead to opportunity and an opportunity to deal ratio are employee and customer referrals. So it's a really good article. You should go through this, take a look at it, and some of the stats are down here below. 13% of the leads that convert to opportunities take about 84 days, and about 6% of all leads that this article went into actually became a deal. It was in a much shorter time. But when you start looking at those little blocks right above that basically show the different marketing activities or campaigns or whatever it might be, you can see that the 3 that really went above the most were websites, social media, and then employee and customer referrals. It's still one of the best ways for you to secure business. Other charts that kind of drive this, the one down below is probably the best. Again, it's just showing you in the lead to deal conversion rate, the fact that those 3 tend to be your best lead sources. It's where you should be spending your money. And the great thing that I'll tell you is relationship, if done correctly, doesn't cost anything. When you actually, we started looking at this, and when you start comparing like trade shows, which has a 0.55% compared to the customer and employee referrals that has 3.63%, you look at the dollars that I can tell you that our organization spends at trade shows, and it's crazy how much you'll spend and try to think that that's what drives the business, when in reality, just being there and having a good relationship can be much more successful. So, not to bore you with the statistics or the details, but, I think we all understand inherently relationships are good for business and data-driven. There's a lot of different studies out there that will tell you that in our business-to-business sales process, relationships are key. So what did I do? So knowing that this was a topic, knowing that relationships are important, you hear about it all the time, I took a page out of my own book, and I always say this to many of my sales team. Whenever you're in a selling process, do not be the smartest person in the room. You don't have to know it all. I don't know it all. I don't know 5% about relationships as compared to the experts that are sitting around me. And so I went through about 20 people that I feel in our organization have a good relationship with me, So somehow they figured out how to build relationships, and they've demonstrated that they have good relationships within the industry. And I just simply emailed them and said, listen, I'm doing this great presentation for our distributor network in the next 2 weeks. I want you to answer these questions. I want you to answer them openly and honestly, and I want you to, just take 15 minutes on a Sunday and just throw your thoughts on paper. Just like last year when I did this, and I asked people to define how they create a balance between their work life and their personal life, it was amazing how fast I was getting responses and how well thought out they were. My hypothesis and theory on that is we're talking about service or operations or treadmills or the industry or HR every single day. But when all of a sudden you ping somebody with this, it's fun to actually talk about because it's something you're not used to exploring. So not being the smartest person in the room, I asked these people and just basically said, listen, how do you personally, how do you define relationship? What are secrets that you're using to keep the relationship strong? Show me some tips and tricks. How do you use it? And then give me some stories. And I'll tell you, that last one is critical. And I strongly recommend that you ask your team their stories, because when you start painting the story, it really gives you the user case and the profile, and it gives you the beginning, the middle, the end, and it tells you exactly what you did to be successful. And the fact is you guys all know this. When we're sitting around at a trade show, maybe having happy hour or at a dinner or whatever it might be, these are the stories we go back to. They're the good old days. They're the remember when Mike Westcott, was out there in his coat and tie and waxing 40 treadmills and really trying to rub dirt on his face so that customer knew how hard he was working. It's like those stories are the ones we laugh about, we share, and then ultimately what you find out is they're the customers that we have the strongest relationship with. So, it was really fun to go through some of these stories, and that's what I wanted to share with you today. So we're going to start with some of the things on defining. So I asked several people, and some of the best answers came back from these individuals. So just going from top to bottom, you can see Heath Debish. You're going to see Heath Debish a lot in here, and we talk about him quite a bit. He is one of the strongest relationship builders I've met. He's really good at it, and so I really wanted to dive into what he had to say. The gentleman in the middle is named Peter Webb. Peter Webb manages about $20 million of business in our European channel. He runs our distribution network as a Kevin Farley would here in the United States. He's been with the organization for over 18 years. He's a driven individual. He's got 2 young boys, and he just doesn't sleep, but a really good individual. And then the bottom one is Duncan Black. Duncan manages our direct team in the UK. And, I'm not going to go through and read every single paragraph. I'm going to let you guys go through this on your own time. But I took the opportunity to go through and just highlight some of the things that I thought were really instrumental. Now, I did not edit any of these, okay? I didn't go in and check spelling, grammar, or any of that because I wanted you to get the raw essence of what they were trying to convey. And, starting with Heath, this is Heath's special trait. He breaks down the business walls immediately and tries to understand the person for who they are. He's old school. He wants to know their likes, their dislikes, their important dates. He wants to know everything about their customer, and he does it in such an unassuming way because he's really good at talking about them and not talking about himself. The more you're around Heath, the more you realize he never talks about himself. He talks about the customers, and he talks about his friends. He talks about his colleagues. He's never talking about himself. And what I've come to find out is it's because he's constantly trying to learn from you. Heath and I share a special connection. We were born on the same day, and we had the same birthday. And so Heath and I know that, and so our little trick would be to see who could wish the other the happy birthday first. And so I thought I was tricky at 12:01 my time doing it. Heath will text me at 9:01 and say, hey, I don't know where you're at, but I'm in Florida, so it's your birthday. And so it's little things like that he's really good at, and he remembers it, and he's just got one of those personalities and one of those mindsets. Peter, and you're going to see themes that are going to they're going to be consistent throughout this presentation. But words communicate, listening, understanding, and then acting. It's really kind of a listen, comprehend, and do type of attitude. And Peter does this better than almost anybody. Peter shows up again later in this presentation as well because he hits the hard topics head on, and he does that by listening carefully and then reacting to it. And so, his definition of relationship is all about listening and understanding, and then having the ability to act. Duncan's a great individual. He's relatively new to the team. He's only been on the team for about 2.5 years now, and trust comes up quite a bit. But what he really talks about are good times and bad, and this segues into probably one of the most important things that I'll tell you. When we went through one of our darkest moments in 2008, and Jeff Dilts came on board and was running marketing in 2010, we did a customer-facing survey, and it was unique. It went to the customers that were continuing to do business with us even after we had some of our worst performance in the history of the company. And it was us going to them with hat in hand saying, why are you still doing business with us? Why? And if you remember, it became actually a tagline for us for several years. The 3 words were relationships, solutions, and innovations. Now, we're not going to talk about innovations today. That's Jeff's presentation probably in January. We will talk solutions a little bit, but obviously the whole topic is relationships. And it was the reason when we were talking to people like the Southampton Roads YMCA or Mike Feeney or many of you as distributors, it was, look, you treated us terrible. You didn't have parts. You couldn't give us any information, but I wasn't going to leave John Gelzo, on the side. Tom Dawson was always there for me. Adam always answered my call. And you would hear these things over and over to the point where, if you remember, we created a slide that was all about the end of the presentation about relationships mattering, solutions that we needed to become a company easier to do business with, and innovation to continue to develop our products. And so, like I said, originally, Adam, myself, Kevin, we come to you from the past. We understand that if you have a strong relationship, going back to what Peter said, it will stick with you through good and through bad. The person who wrote that was this guy right here, Jeff Dilts. And this was Jeff's response when I asked him, and I said, hey, listen, I asked him the same question I asked everybody else. I didn't give anybody special treatment. And, I'll go on record saying that this is the one individual that has the ability to create relationships in an extremely fast amount of time. People will come into our building, they'll do tours, they'll meet people at trade shows. Some people are memorable, some people are not. I'll tell you, there are a lot of times that I'm meeting people for the 3rd and 4th time, and I kick myself because I didn't take that opportunity the first time to create that connection. Very rarely, maybe because he's 6'9", I'm not sure, but very rarely do people not remember this individual. And, you can see the reason they don't is because a couple of key words. Jeff treats relationships as a broad continuum. And we're going to talk about that here in a second because, as I said in the beginning, this is not a light switch. This is a behavior that you have to focus on moving people from left to right on the continuum. And the way he does it are with these 5 things. And this is something that I honestly will print out and put on my wall because I do think that this, if I stopped here, we could pretty much be done with how do you build relationships. Number 1, respect. And I key on the word outward. It's okay to sit down, and if I'm talking to Adam and I say, boy, I really like Kelly Naylor. He's a good guy, and I respect him. He does what he says what he is going to do, and then he does it. And, I can have all those conversations, but the key to respect is to make sure that there's always an outward demonstration of that. So take time to figure out how you can demonstrate your respect every day. As an outward approach. I think if there's anything to learn from this crazy election we just had, some of the best things I heard on both sides of the wall whether it be from talk show hosts or whether it be from pundits or whether it be from the Republicans or the Democrats, after they got through all their garbage, they'd say, it really doesn't matter. It's how you go out and act now on a daily basis. And I really think that, that respect is a huge, huge thing. Empathy, never losing sight of what the other person's perception, expectations, and needs are. This one's probably more internally than even externally, because I think we sit back and we're in sales. Our job is to understand the customer's needs and always try to give them solutions that meet their needs. And ultimately, I say this all the time, no matter where you're selling into, people are trying to get more of a customer and keep the customers they have. I mean, that's ultimately, it's no rocket science. It's no secret. Sometimes I'll say, hey, maybe you need to dive a little deeper to understand what their real problems are so you can try to solve those. And it may not be because of a treadmill or a strength piece, but it might be because of something else you can provide. But internally, this is one that has to be driven. And you all have marketing and service and sales and finance and whatever it might be within your organizations. Constantly keep sight of what that person's trying to accomplish, and you'll earn a strong relationship if you're trying to solve that person's needs. And this is something that I continue to drive with my organization. Trust. This comes up over and over and over, and the words are honesty and integrity. And I'll talk about this here in just a little bit. But the key that Jeff points out here is honesty and integrity are so difficult because it takes forever to build, and it takes one single action to break. And that's a huge amount of responsibility. Compassion. Compassion, the key one is committed time. And compassion is probably one of those, as Jeff says, it's the greatest gift you can give in a relationship. And it's probably more even on a personal level than it is a professional level. And this goes back to the work balance conversation I had. You have to invest time with your loved ones. You have to invest committed time to people outside of work, to people inside of work. The point is please don't be there. We did the whole thing on multitasking, right? If you're multitasking, it takes you 25 minutes to get back on task. It's the equivalent of smoking pot and being wasted the whole time. And it's just a really bad habit to get into, and we all do it. We're in meetings, we're on phones, we're doing emails during meetings, we're not focused. Compassion and committed time are key to building good business relationships. And then finally, and he brought this up last year, I had to go back and make sure he did, attitude. One thing that I can learn from Jeff, I think many people can, is that last sentence. In every relationship, you have the choice on how you lead the situation. You can make it brighter, keep it the same, or make it darker. It's really up to you. And that is the situation of, do you want to talk negatively about a situation, or do you want to try to find a solution? So I spent a lot of time on this slide because I actually have a lot of respect for the amount of effort that he put into it. My guess is this took Jeff about 2 minutes to type up. Actually, there's not many misspellings, so he probably took about 5. But he really is the epitome of someone who can connect with people and gather relationships quickly. So on that note, we're going to go to the first mini assignment, and it goes into a continuum. So I recap this at the end, but this is what I'd like you to think of. There's 4 mini assignments. Do you have to do all 4? I'd love it, but it's really up to you. You guys have taken the time to quote unquote waste an hour today, so why not get something out of it? If you Google relationship continuums, you're going to get 1,500 images. This is probably one of the simplest ones, and you can use this when you're thinking about creating your website. You can think about this in your sales process. You can think about this in many different ways. The idea here is you're dealing with certain people that right now are transactional exchanges. You may not even know them. They may be coming to your website, ordering a part, you're delivering it, and away you go. My argument would be that your website should be trying to move from left to right. How do you take that anonymous person, give them a voice, give them a face, and really start providing them value? So in your day-to-day transactions, if you're in a face-to-face, business-to-business, there's very few transactional exchanges, and there's probably more value-added exchanges. Your job is to figure out how to move people from transactional to value-added to true collaborations. And if you can get to true collaborations where somebody's sitting down saying, I need to invest money, what do you think? And hey, I think this, I think you're wrong, and you start getting into these true collaborative efforts, you will have a customer for life. When they come to you, we always said this, right? When they come to you and ask for your advice, you've got it. And so find 3 customers you are working with in each category. Figure them out. Put a face to them. Put a name to them. Who are 3 people you've got anonymous transactions? Who are people who you're adding value, but maybe you're not collaborative? And who are your best relationships? And continue to figure out what you can do to move them from left to right. I don't have the answers here, but I think as soon as you start bucketing them and you start thinking, okay, what's the difference between these value-added and these transactional ones, and you start finding those root causes, those are the things you can start working on. There's a second assignment that I'll hit right away. This is mini assignment number 2. And this one, I always say I call this my house of cards idea. Usually I'm working out, I'm on the tread climber, I'm thinking through, what we're going to present. To let you know, truly, I'm done watching House of Cards. If any of you followed my trilogy, I'm now on Sons of Anarchy. And I sit there and it just allows me to decompress from work. And I started going through my absolute best relationships. I started defining them. Who are my top 5 relationships in the industry? And the tremendously profound moment I had was those had to start somewhere. They did not just, I wasn't born with them, right? And so I want you to think about your absolute best relationships that you have today and then go back to when you met that person. What was the situation? What were you asked to do? How did it start? And really start defining those great things. I can tell you one of my best relationships is a gentleman by the name of Chris Kolb. Chris Kolb was one of my first customers. He was up in Camarillo, California. Camarillo was about an hour 20 minutes away from the city of Los Angeles. When I started in 1998, it was one of these things where a lot of reps weren't going out and visiting him. And he ended up purchasing Star Trek treadmills from us. And I remember going in and buying pizza for the whole staff and doing the quote-unquote in-service. But when I talk with him, he always says, first off, you came up to see me every 4 to 5 weeks. You were always in my facility. You always said hi to my employees. He tells you all those things. And you go back now, and I don't get to see Chris nearly as much. He's now in Illinois. He's working as a manager in LA Fitness, so we catch up at Club Industries or Ursa's or wherever it might be. But we still have a pretty fun, strong relationship where we can connect socially, and we can talk about the quote-unquote good old days. But the thing is consider the next new person you're going to meet. You may have a meeting this afternoon. You may be meeting on Monday. You may have never met this person, but in 3 to 5 years, they may be that same individual that we're talking about today. And so, it's really simple. Your mini assignments to draft out your best relationships, understand truly the traits. Inherently, you probably know, it's this is what I did, but what are the specifics you did? And then try to figure out how you replicate them in the next 2 weeks with the people you don't know. So 2 things you should work on moving people up the relationship continuum, and then work on figuring out how you can absolutely create the next new relationship. So let me move on to some tips and tricks. So again, asking these individuals was a great exercise for me. The gentleman on the top, if you don't know him, is John Gelzo. Happened to be the first picture I found of John, and this is just typical of John. John's wearing a pink shirt. This was last October in Murrieta, California. They were doing a breast cancer awareness seminar, and John was there in full pink, and then they were doing a renovation on the Y where they were doing just some repainting and stuff like that, and that's John taping off, assisting with the Murrieta Ys in order to just assist. And of course, the great story is now they are a customer of ours. We were out of that YMCA association for years. John's biggest thing, if you ask who's one of the most honest and has the most integrity in our company, John comes to the top of the list. And that's because John comes from a strong background within the YMCA. He's been completely honest all the time. I've been with John where I've seen him say no to people or we can't do it. John continuously gets some of the strongest margins in our company because he provides that honest value and asset. But one of the things he stated in here was, you have to be honest whether you believe it or not. And the example he uses is the consultant approach of when they say, hey, maybe we want 8 of these tread climbers, or maybe we want 20 of these gauntlets and 10 of these treadmills, or they may say something that would ultimately benefit you in the short term. But John, knowing the situation, will consult them to get to the best solution. Now, it's all different for every market, and I'm not telling you to go out there and sell less product. But the point is there are certain people that may want to go down a path that the trend is waning, and you may have better information, and it may hurt you in the short term. It's still better to be honest and upfront in that situation. And so, honesty will come up over and over in this presentation, a strong tip and trick. Kevin Farley, who's unfortunately not on the call right now, he's on a plane, so we can make fun of him, I guess. Again, be honest to a fault, and it basically is echoing what John said. Listen first. I put an editor's note in here. I almost chuckled at that one because if we all know Kevin, that might not be his strongest trait at times. But actually, all joking aside, when you pull back and you see Kevin in action, he's a very, very good listener. He's already got the solution in his head, and it's very hard for people like that because it's kind of like, I don't need to hear what you're going to say. I already know what you need. Kevin does a good job of waiting and letting that person define the problem and the solution before he jumps in. We're going to talk a lot about understanding and so on and so forth. I like the other two. Almost everything I learned about relationships, I learned in the locker room: teamwork, dedication, discipline, encouragement, problem solving, coaching, game planning. Followed up with everything else was learned in kindergarten. Being polite, share, and of course, when all else fails, a good nap is in order. Integrity is a huge word that continues to come up. And so I've told this story in the past. You may have heard it. I really do believe in this. This was when I was hiring individuals up in Vancouver to take over the customer support organization. When I was in that role, I would ask every individual to give me their definition of integrity on the spot. And one individual asked to get up on the board and drew this diagram. And he said, I think it's really simple. He said, I think the definition of integrity is the overlap between making and meeting commitments. And, the more I played that out in my head, the more genius I thought that comment was. And what I mean by that is, you can meet commitments all day long. Somebody can say, hey, I need that report sent over to me, and you can send over that report. Somebody can say, hey, call me tomorrow night, and you can go ahead and call. But there's a certain element of magic that happens when you respond with just even the exact making of a commitment. So the difference in send that report and replying with, I'll send that report by 4 o'clock, and just sending the report is, you can be meeting commitments all day long, but you're not building integrity. When you make commitments and then you meet commitments, you start building integrity because you start doing what you say you're going to do. And so one of the tips and tricks when I was running service, back in the day when it was extremely challenging, I had to teach my team how to make commitments. They were actually really good at reacting, and sales would light them up on something, and they would respond and get something out, but they never said, hey, Kevin, I'm going to do this, knowing that they're going to do it. It takes a little bit of time, but I was trying to teach them, make a commitment first, 20 minutes later, follow up on that commitment, and then there's another one in here that I didn't put, which is then tell them that you did what you did. And we used to call it taking the victory lap, okay? What I really recommend, and this is really challenging to do for a lot of people, but try to make 3 commitments every day that you can meet in that day. And it's really kind of hard. It may just simply be calling your wife and saying, I will be home at 6. You may have all the intensive plans on being home at 6, but if you don't tell her, I'm going to be home at 6, and then you show up, you just show up at 6 o'clock, right? So really focus on making those commitments. And like I said, they can be things you're going to do anyways, but there's a real magic when it comes to the overlap. And the more you get that overlap, the more people say, hey, he's going to do what he says he's going to do. So if you've ever been around Michael Bruno's favorite saying is this: do what you say you're going to do when you say you're going to do it. So he says this all the time. It's one of his 3 to 4 mantras that he lives by. And, it's one of those things that when we talk about building relationships and people continue to say honesty and integrity, that integrity word can mean a lot of different things. I really do think it comes down to this statement right here. Do what you say you're going to do when you say you're going to do it. So your challenge is to create 3 commitments, put a timeline on it, and then execute on it, and then come back and say, hey, I got you that report. Like I said, you'll see a lot of times in my emails, I'll be talking with Dustin. This is one that came up today. He said, Terry, I want to see some data from you, blah, 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 blah. So I said, okay, I'll tell you what, I'm meeting with the distributors at 9 o'clock my time. I'll have time at 10. I'll have it to you by noon. When I respond back to him, and I've already got the file set up ready to go at noon, my statement will say, Dustin, as we talked about and as I committed to, here's the data you asked. I'll put it right in the sentence. And I want to continue to build that integrity with the president of the company or with Dave Mendenhall or with whomever it might be. So a very big important thing, keep working on your integrity. Other tips and tricks. Mike Kelly up there. You talk about relationships. That's my daughter on his right. And one of the great things that I see with our company and why we have such great employees is how the relationships tend to cross lines. And I'm actually okay with that because a lot of the people I work with, I also respect inside and outside of the company. Heath is down there below with G-Man. That's Vanessa Clapper's son. And there's a lot of great relationships that you see that come out of that. And so Mike's big thing on his tips and tricks, the thing I always say is understanding will always open the door. And, I skip all the stuff in the middle, but the point is you really have to understand. To understand, you have to ask the right questions, you have to listen, and there's something else there. You have to have a baseline of knowledge and perspective of what's going on with the world we live in, and we'll talk about that here in a second. I go back to Heath. We talked about this. He asks more questions than he talks. He's constantly asking, almost to a fault, almost to an uncomfortable pregnant pause, but it's what makes him successful. He's asking non-product questions, non-work questions. He's trying to understand about the person as a person, as I said. And so this brings us to mini assignment number 3. And this was something that I learned from Kevin Corbelis. Kevin Corbelis has a father-in-law that was in the FBI. And we're going to call this the Stranger Game. And it's actually kind of a fun game. And he talked to me about this 18 months ago, and I still use it to this day. The Stranger Game is going to allow you to practice relationship building in a cold call situation, which is safe because it doesn't necessarily have to be in a business environment. It can be in any environment you're at your child's soccer game, at a networking event, when you're out having dinner, whatever it might be. This is a fun game to try. This is, as I mentioned, Kevin's father-in-law was in the FBI, and this was training that they did in many cases to test how well people can connect and get information. And so what your challenge is, whenever you're in your next cold call social situation, your job is to ask questions to gain a connection, a true connection, within 5 questions. Now, what I mean by that is you're trying to find something in common with that person, and it can't just be you both like football or you both did whatever it might be. It has to be something to the point where, oh my gosh, you know that person? I know that person. Where did you go to school? Or some type of connection where you get to a point where you say, that is unbelievable. If you get to the point where you can say, boy, it's a small world, then you've won that game. And the reason we do this is not because we're really creepy and we're trying to find out stuff about other people. It's going to perfect your questioning skills so that when you truly do get into a business environment, you can absolutely try to find a definite connection. So try this out. It's a lot of fun. When I met my wife, not that I was using this game, within 3 questions, we had found out that her cousin was one of my best friends in college. And it was just a really weird connection. We didn't know each other before then. This was 4 years later. And it was all just about, oh, you went here, I went here. Oh, did you know this person? Yeah, I knew that person. Oh, that person did this. And oh, holy cow, you know Jeff Ehrlich? I know Jeff Ehrlich. And so it's a really, it connects relationships deeply. Obviously, I've been married to the woman for 18 years now. So, it's a fun game. Other tips and tricks. This is, again, Peter Webb up there on the top. Provide a solution in the soundboard. So we haven't talked about this as much. We said relationships, solutions, and innovations were the three words that came out of why people continue to do business with us. Peter was one of the first ones to really go in and start talking about the solutions and the soundboard. You will grow your relationship if you provide more than a spec sheet. If you provide more than the talking points that we train you about in product management. We've talked about this before. You have to be a student of the game. You have to continuously be learning, and you have to be a well-rounded individual that can go in and consult on a daily basis. I get the benefit of sitting in these four walls 5 days a week. I can understand what's going on in quality. I can understand what's going on in engineering. I can understand what's going on in marketing. My challenge is I'm not spending nearly as much time as you guys are in the field understanding what the trends are. I say this every time. If your reps are going out and making 5 calls a day, 5 calls, they should be doing 8 to 10, but let's say they're doing 5 calls a day and they have one office day. That's 20 calls a week. After a month, they've been into 80 facilities. If they're not becoming an expert after being into 80 facilities, then something is wrong. They should be learning something from every facility they walk into to hone their consultative skills so that when asked, they can provide a solution. Heath, again, there's Heath holding up money from a trade show when he won the big bucks because he's got strong relationship skills. And, again, it goes into he's got this unbelievable ability to remember the special dates, the birthdays, the anniversaries. He knows how to make those little things matter. And so, what I talk about here is there is an enormous amount of education and tracking that are going on that if you're not using technology at this point, you're behind the curve. I put this slide up in my presentation I did last year. You need to have an insatiable desire to learn. This comes from Kevin Ike. Always be a student of the game. And right now, the ability to learn is fast and furious. There is more stuff out there now to clutter your head that if you're not using technology to refine what stories you're reading, to pocket it away and read it at a time that's good for you, to use collaborative note process, then all you're hearing is noise. And so I strongly recommend that you work on your technology skills and you get to a place where you can put all of this content into a space that can make it actionable and useful. The other thing I'll point out is social relationships. As we're seeing now more than ever, Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and Snapchat and all these, there's this massive blurring of the lines where when it first started, it was, none of my business associates are going to be friends on Facebook. And then it kind of blurred with, well, I like these guys, but I don't really want these people seeing it, to now you're seeing, hey, if I'm not interacting on Facebook, then I'm losing out on opportunities where other people are. And so what I'll tell you, and this isn't a whole topic on social relationships, but number one, it's critical to understand your customer's preference of relationship bonding. And what I mean by that is not everybody responds to a text. Not everybody responds to an email. Some people only want to respond to a text. Some people want to connect through Facebook. It's really important for you to understand those boundaries. I tell you what, I might be a little more old school, but it'll be near the end of the month and we're waiting on a deal or we're waiting on something, and nothing burns me more than when I ask a territory manager or somebody, hey, where are we at with that? And they say, you know what, I don't know, I emailed him and he hasn't gotten back to me. Or I texted him, but he hasn't responded. And then the common thing is, yeah, they only respond to text. I guarantee you that if you make certain calls, you find out that they don't just respond to text, they respond to calls. The thing is some people do. Point here is understand how your customer wants to communicate and how they want to grow their relationship. Some of them are still in that platform of I do not mix business and pleasure, so don't friend them on Facebook. Don't follow them on Instagram. Don't be that stalker. Others fully expect you to be engaged. The other thing, I already hit that. The one thing I will tell you, though, is as we said, the social media relationships are continuing to grow. It's a massive amount of power. It's a massive amount of ability to learn an amazing amount of information to grow those relationships. The final aspect of this is Salesforce, and I know it's a dirty word. It's a dirty word in many cases because it's been launched and implemented the wrong way. And so, one thing I'll tell you right now is CRM is not these things. It's not an opportunity manager. It's not a forecasting tool. It's not a quoting program. It's not a Rolodex. It's not a management activity tracker to make sure that everybody's making 20 phone calls. It's none of that. It doesn't say that in the definition. The definition is customer relationship manager. And it just so happens that there are so many things that go into relationships that this is a strong, powerful tool that allows you to keep everything in one space. So the big word that we're really focusing on right now is collaboration. And the more you allow your entire organization to collaborate, the more you'll be able to build relationships. And I didn't put this slide in here, and I really wanted to. And it does fall on the tip and trick. And I know that I'm speaking to many owners right now, but even if you're not an owner, the one thing I will tell you, and I should have said this from the get-go, is relationship building is not a sales team support mechanism. It is a company-wide initiative. And the more you empower your company to build relationships, the better you are. I go back to the days when we were in one building and when we would do our quote-unquote customer tour, the customers would come around and they would meet credit and they would meet service and they would meet their account coordinator and they would meet their inside sales rep. And it was one of these things where they would walk out of there and every single time they would say, the reason I like your company is because I feel like I'm part of the family. And so a CRM allows you to collaborate with a remote workforce. And so one of the things we've implemented over the course of the last 6 months is this within our CRM system is something called Sales Overview. And Sales Overview is nothing more than a collaborative notepad that allows us to date and stamp notes that we can go in and we can read exactly what's going on within a facility so that everybody is participating. And so you can see here, these are notes coming from the territory manager to Rick Nelson, the regional manager, to myself. You'll see notes in here from credit. You'll see notes in here from service. And it just allows you to have a snapshot of what's going on at a very detailed level. All these tools, you guys can use whatever tool you want. I promise you, any CRM system, any note-taking system, anything that's out there today, the ultimate goal is to build a collaborative tool that allows you to dial in and build relationships. So, my mini assignment number 4 and the final one is you need to take an hour every morning for the next 2 weeks to really work on how are you going to build relationships. Zone in on technology. How are you using technology today? It's not a dirty word. Get in there. Figure out how it can help you. One of the things we're really stressing, you got to use one tracking mechanism. If you're using 4 or 5 tools, if you're using Excel and you're using ACT and you're using Salesforce and you've got a notepad, you have to get down to one tool. You are crippling your effort to build relationships and to have efficiency. We talked about the targeting of the 3 customers, but whatever it is you want to do, take an hour, take 30 minutes every morning and say, what am I going to do today to work on relationships? And then go out and execute to it. We've got about 10 minutes left. I'm not going to go through all these stories, but some of them were really, really cool. And again, I'm not going to read through all of them. This is Martin Hirsch. He runs our direct sales efforts in Germany. He's got 6 reps that report to him, an amazing individual. He goes through this entire story, and I thought this was really kind of cool because, it goes into the East Germany versus West Germany dilemma that continues to this day. And he says, listen, I'd be foolish if assuming that you understand the subtleties of what it's like to do business with East and West German. But let's just suffice to say, the people in East Germany continue to think that the people in West Germany are taking them for a ride. And even though we've been reunified for 26 years, there's a lot of unscrupulous people in the West that are taking advantage of the East, because the West, from a history lesson, was non-communistic, the East being communistic. The West became much more entrepreneurial and business savvy. And when the reunification started, you had a lot of Eastern business individuals that didn't understand how to run a business that would pay consulting fees and taxes and so on and so forth. And so his best relationship story was the fact that he was able to go in, work with a gentleman named Gunther from the East, and really just earned his respect. And he earned his respect in his relationship. As you see, Gunther in his English, simply out to find someone with a similar moral compass, and that's who he found in Martin. The statement below is testament. This started about 4 years ago, and Fitness Loft was about 26% of our revenue this year in Germany. So, we all understand it. Relationships are important. They don't happen overnight. They don't pay off overnight. But 4 years later, it's a quarter of the business we're doing in Germany. So it can be very, very powerful. So really cool story about that. Do what you're going to say you're going to do. This was a great story from Rick Nelson. Rick been with the company for over 23 years. And the reason that he's been in this role is because he still goes back to the old school way of building relationships. This is a great story about a Gold Gym in 2013. It shows a competitor on there. And this is less about us building that relationship. And what I want to stress is more about the ramifications of not doing what you say you're going to do. He had a product issue. The customer had a product issue with an Olympic bench press. The rep made a commitment, told him he would replace it, and didn't do it. An Olympic bench press is a $1,000 question, right? So it's expensive in its own right. But when you go further down and you realize that an entire club of $400,000 wasn't secured because of this one commitment. It wasn't about the cost. It was about the moral. And he lost it. At best case, that poor Matrix rep would have done the deal at a cost plus scenario and would have lost thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars because of not making good on what you say you're going to do. And so, later on, last night after I was going through this, I realized that Rick said right in the end, do what you say you would do when you said you would do it. And it's, again, just taking right off of the mantra from Michael Bruno. It's about you, not the product. My last Heath Debish reference. This is a good one because Heath just secured a deal where we were able to turn over about 10 family centers, over 200 group cycles to the Schwinn product after years and years and years and years of courting this association to purchase spinning. And the hardest thing in the world to do, and I'll tell you as a product manager I did this, and as a sales rep I did this, it's to go out there and speak with passion on a product, and then to find out that the silly product management group changes things. I was in a fight with an individual in Asia because we went from a 2.5 horsepower DC motor to a 5 horsepower AC motor, and this individual was so focused on selling DC over AC that they didn't know how they were going to convert that conversation. It's kind of comical today when you think about that, but it really is one of these things of, look, sell what you have today. It's really important, but understand that the relationship is between you personally and that customer. He took this customer to WSSC several years, created the experience, explained to them why it was so important for spinning. When the relationship dissolved and we went into a new relationship coming into this year, he had the fight of his life to go in there and explain that it wasn't about spinning, it was about him, and he won this contract. And it was a very tenuous thing, but it really came down to Heath is constantly trying to resolve that customer's issues. And a final story, and I put this one up here because Michael Bruno, when I sent this out, I of course included him, was one of the first people that responded to me, and it was awesome, and I love it. I love the tagline at the end. Not sure if this helps or what you want, typical Michael Bruno, but he obviously had a ton to say, and he says it right there. There's a lot I can say here, but he goes through the story of when he started in the construction industry, and what he tells you in this is how important it was for him to have relationships when he started. He took the exact same formula that he did in Ohio as a 30-year-old, and he built up a very strong business there, and he took it to Dallas. But without relationships, it made it much, much harder. And he never was able to break in and do this. And his point was, look, Terry, I worked very hard. I did the same thing I did in Ohio. But the difference between working hard and having relationships and working hard and not having relationships was the difference between a lucrative career and basically being so broke that he didn't even have gas money to get back to Ohio. He had to hitchhike home. And so his takeaway is, so your takeaway from all this work is forming great relationships. Save yourself from the embarrassment of having to hitchhike ever in your life. And there's so many things that you can learn from this story. One, Michael values relationships. Two, it's what got him to where he is today. And three, it can be the difference between a very successful career and a very mediocre career. So to wrap it up, please think about doing these assignments. I think they're fun to do. Number one, figure out your continuum. Put some faces to the names of the people that are transactional, to the people that are value added, and to the people you're collaborating with, and then understand what it is you're doing differently between those groups, and keep trying to take the transactional and the value added up to the value added up to the continuum. I think if you put 2 or 3 people in each of those buckets, it'll start becoming extremely evident. But if you just think you already know, there's a certain magic that happens when you break away and write it down and spend some time on it. Number 2, keep reminding yourself of the story of your best relationship and how it started, and then go figure out who the next one is. The next person you meet that you don't know, I want you to go in with the mindset that this may be your best relationship in 5 years. So treat it that way. Assignment number 3, play the stranger game. When you're out this weekend, when you're out at a restaurant, if you're meeting people. I was at a volleyball banquet last night for my daughter. Obviously we've got a connection. Our daughters play volleyball, but my challenge with a couple people, my wife always jokes with me because we go to weddings or we go to something, and if you get stuck at a table of 8 to 10 people you don't know, I'm generally the person that's asking the questions, that's getting people to interact, and she's not. And she always walks out of there and says, "You're really good at that. You like doing it." And it's like, listen, my choice is to sit there and look at my phone and try to understand why Louisville's losing to Houston by 31 points, or it's to engage. I'm already there, right? So I might as well engage. And so take that opportunity to engage and play that stranger game. By the way, I wouldn't recommend this to tell your kids to do this. That's not what I'm trying to advocate here. Number 4, work on it. Work on it. Spend an hour for the next 2 weeks. And of course, they always say, if you spend an hour every day for the next 2 weeks working on relationships and you truly do this, it'll become habit forming. It doesn't have to be something you do for the rest of your life. Maybe it's something you check in on then once every month to refine yourself, to keep sharpening your saw. But if you do these 4 things, I promise you'll come back at our next dealer owner meeting with a great story about a relationship. So remember, if I had to walk away with any of these things right now, you want to listen, you want to be a consultant, and you want to work on your honesty and integrity. So in summary, remember, relationships are not an action. You're not going to be able to go decide you want to do it today. You're going to have to make it a behavior. Whenever you do a behavior, it's a lifestyle event. It's change that has to happen consistently, but it's absolutely something that can be achieved. It's just willpower that drives it. And quite frankly, most of the people on this phone are here because of this. So use this to drive your organizations. Relationships are what is the most efficient way of going from a lead to a deal. So don't lose sight of that. If you're sitting there like we are right now trying to figure out how to spend your marketing dollar, make sure that everything is tying to how you can grow relationships. Don't discount the tools and technology that are out there today. Don't think that it's a fad. There are ways of it helping you remember dates, point you in the right direction, remind you to make calls, remind you to do things that maybe you haven't done to take that massive amount of information that's out there today and to refine it into the things that are important to you. And integrity. Integrity is making and meeting commitments, and I can't stress that enough. focus on the word making and go make a few commitments and meet them today. And then when you've done that, take that victory lap and you'll see that your relationships will improve. At that point, I will, I don't know, Adam, if it's formal to unmute the call or what, I can take any questions, or please follow me at some of these links. I'll put more articles up as I see them. It's a great way of getting the information out to you guys, and I just can't thank you guys enough for bringing me in and letting me have this hour with you. If I don't get the chance to see you or talk to you or converse, I want everybody to have an unbelievable Thanksgiving, spend some great quality time with your families, your friends, your loved ones, do the things you want to do, and, finish hard. I'm looking forward to an amazing 2017. We're doing some really great things, and I couldn't be happier to be with this organization and to be here with you guys. So thank you guys very much.
Well, Terry, that was fantastic. A lot to think about. We took the whole hour, and so I'm going to go ahead and call it. But as always, this will be recorded. It has been recorded, and it will be placed on the porthole. It should be available within the next about 10 minutes. If you checked the porthole, it'll be there. Make sure that others in your organization that, for whatever reason, had to miss this live presentation, make sure that they get an opportunity to get on and check it out from the recorded version. Thank you, Terry. That was really good. A lot to think about, and I second Terry's wish for everyone to have a very, very great Thanksgiving. Thanks, everyone.